Raymond Robert arrived home earlier than usual that afternoon. He pushed open the door and stood frozen in place. His 6-month-old son, the infant doctors insisted was born completely blind, was gazing directly at the new housekeeper's face and grinning. Raymond's briefcase crashed to the floor. How could this be happening? 6 months earlier, Raymond's entire world collapsed in a Boston hospital. His wife, Kelvin, passed away 3 hours after delivering their child. He clutched her hand as life drained from her eyes while their newborn wailed down the corridor. 6 weeks later, Dr. Helena Crane informed him, "Your son's optic nerves never developed properly. He's permanently blind." Raymond attempted everything imaginable. Lights, sounds, colorful toys, nothing produced results. Samuel never looked toward him, never reached outward, never reacted. The estate became like a graveyard. Staff members spoke in hushed tones. 3 housekeepers resigned. Then Angela Harris walked through the entrance gates. 28 years old, orphaned, invisible throughout her entire existence. On her 5th day working there, she touched Samuel's hand. He gripped it. Over 2 weeks, she observed him carefully. When she hummed melodies, his head rotated. When sunlight shifted, his eyes tracked it. Then she discovered the bottle. Opticom solution for optic nerve sedation. Her blood turned ice cold. Someone was deliberately keeping this infant blind intentionally. 3 days ago during Samuel's bath, he looked directly at Angela and grinned. His hand reached up and touched her cheek. That's when Raymond walked in. He witnessed everything. What they uncovered that evening shattered everything he had believed. And the person responsible was closer than he ever suspected. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like, and tell me where around the globe you're watching from. Because sometimes when we think God has abandoned us, He's already sent someone who refuses to look away. 3 years ago, Raymond Robert stood in an empty bedroom with paint samples in his hand and his wife laughing beside him. "Blue or yellow?" he asked. Kelvin pressed her palm against her swollen belly. "Both? Our son deserves a bedroom full of brightness." They painted it together, soft blues, warm yellows, colors their baby would wake up to every single morning. That was the vision. 6 months ago, the vision died. Kelvin went into labor on a Tuesday morning. Everything seemed fine until it wasn't. 3 hours after Samuel was born, she started hemorrhaging badly. Raymond held her hand while doctors attempted to stop the bleeding. They couldn't. He kissed her forehead, told her he loved her deeply, and felt her fingers grow cold in his. Their son was 3 hours old when Raymond became a widower. For 6 weeks, he attempted to survive it. Bottles at 2 in the morning, diaper changes, rocking Samuel when he cried endlessly. He'd stand in that painted nursery holding his son, whispering, "We're going to survive this." Then Dr. Helena Crane destroyed him. "Your son is blind," she announced. "His optic nerves didn't develop. It's permanent." Raymond stared at her blankly. "What does that mean?" "It means he'll never see. Not you, not light, not anything." He went home and tried everything possible. Toys that glowed brightly, rattles that played cheerful music. He'd wave them in front of Samuel's face, desperate for just one flicker of recognition. Nothing happened. Samuel's eyes remained empty. His body remained motionless. And every night, Raymond knelt beside the crib and broke a little more inside. The house died with him. Curtains remained closed constantly. Staff whispered like they were attending a funeral. 3 housekeepers couldn't handle it. They quit without any explanation. Raymond stopped attending work, stopped answering his phone calls. Some mornings he'd sit in the nursery for countless hours staring at the blues and yellows Kelvin had cherished, wondering why God gave him a son who'd never witnessed them. Late one night, he stood at Samuel's crib and whispered, "I don't know how to manage this without her." Samuel didn't move at all. Raymond's voice cracked badly. "You're all I have remaining, but you don't even know I'm here." That's when Mr. Chen knocked softly on the door. "Sir, the new housekeeper arrives tomorrow." Raymond didn't turn around. "Fine. She's the fourth one in 4 months. I told her what to expect." Raymond nodded, still staring at his son. What he didn't know was that this housekeeper would be different. She wouldn't quit. She wouldn't look away, and she'd see what nobody else had seen. Angela Harris stepped out of the ride-share vehicle and stared up at the entrance gates. Fog rolled in from the surrounding hills, swallowing the estate like it was attempting to hide something dark. She pulled her jacket tighter, gripped her worn canvas bag, and told herself the same thing she'd been repeating for 3 weeks. Just work. Just disappear. 28 years old and she'd been disappearing her whole life. Foster care taught her that harsh lesson. 18 different homes before she aged out at 18 with nothing except a high school diploma and a deep bone-tired loneliness she couldn't shake off. She spent the next 10 years cleaning hotel rooms at 4 in the morning, scrubbing office floors after everyone went home, folding other people's laundry in houses where nobody knew her name. Invisible work, invisible life. When she saw the advertisement, live-in housekeeper, remote estate, generous pay, private quarters, she didn't ask questions. She just said yes. Because sometimes you don't run toward something. You just run. Mr. Chen opened the gates without a single word. No smile, no welcome, just a stiff nod and a wave to follow him. Inside, the house was spotless. Floors shined like polished glass. Furniture sat perfect and untouched. But the air felt wrong, too still, too quiet, like the whole place was holding its breath anxiously. He walked her through room after room, kitchen, living room, hallways that echoed with every footstep. Then she noticed the photographs on the wall. A woman with dark hair and bright eyes, laughing joyfully. The same woman holding a newborn baby, her face glowing with a kind of happiness Angela had only ever witnessed from a distance. Her chest tightened painfully. "That's Mrs. Robert," Mr. Chen said flatly. "She passed 6 months ago." Angela nodded, but she couldn't stop staring at the woman's radiant smile. "Mr. Robert doesn't like noise," Mr. Chen continued. "He keeps to himself mostly. Do your work. Stay out of his way. Understood?" "Understood." He showed her to a small room off the kitchen, a bed, a window overlooking fog-covered hills. "Nothing else. You start tomorrow morning. 6 o'clock sharp." Angela set her bag down and nodded. When he left, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the bare walls. This was supposed to be a place to forget, a place to work and stay quiet, and let the world move on without her. But something about this house felt different. She lay back, listened to the wind hum against the glass, and closed her eyes. Somewhere down the hall, she heard it, faint, almost like a whisper, a baby crying softly. Then silence. Angela opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. What kind of grief, she thought, turns a house into a tomb? She didn't know yet, but she was about to find out. Angela's 5th morning started like the others. She woke at 5:45, made her bed, and moved through the house like a ghost, dusting shelves nobody touched, folding towels nobody used. The work was easy. The silence was not. She hadn't seen Mr. Robert once. He left early, came back late, if he came back at all. The only proof he existed was the untouched plate of food the cook left on the counter each night. Around mid-morning, Angela was dusting the living room when she heard footsteps approaching. Mr. Chen walked past carrying a bundle wrapped in a soft blue blanket. He set it down on a padded mat near the window, adjusted the edges carefully, and turned to leave. That's when Angela saw a baby, 6 months old maybe, blonde hair catching the morning light, lying perfectly still. She froze, cloth in hand. Mr. Chen noticed her staring. "That's Samuel," he said. "Mr. Robert's son." Angela's throat tightened. "He's so quiet. He's blind." Mr. Chen's voice was flat like he'd said it 100 times before. Can't see. Can't hear properly either. His brain doesn't process things the way it should. Angela looked at the baby. His eyes were open, blue, clear, but fixed on absolutely nothing. Don't bother talking to him, Mr. Chen added. He doesn't respond. Best to just leave him be. He walked out. Angela stood there staring at Samuel. At 6 months, babies grabbed things, babbled constantly, smiled at faces. This child lay motionless like the world had forgotten to wake him up. She should have gone back to dusting, should have followed the rules strictly. But something pulled her forward. She knelt beside him, lowering herself slowly. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered. Nothing. She reached out, hesitated, then gently touched his hand. His fingers twitched. Angela's breath caught. She waited, heart pounding, then stroked his palm again. Soft, deliberate. This time, his hand didn't just twitch. It curled. His tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb, holding on. Angela froze, staring at their hands. His grip was weak, fragile, but it was there, real, intentional. "You felt that," she whispered. "Didn't you?" Samuel didn't move, didn't look at her, but his fingers stayed wrapped around hers. Angela glanced toward the hallway, listened carefully. No one was coming. She stayed there for a long moment, watching him, his chest rising and falling, his hand holding hers. This isn't random, she thought. This is awareness. She'd spent her whole life reading people, learning to see what they didn't say, what they tried to hide. She knew the difference between a reflex and a response. This was a response. Slowly, she pulled her hand back. Samuel's fingers opened, empty again. Angela stood, heart racing. She wanted to call someone, tell them. But who would believe her? Mr. Chen had been clear. Samuel didn't respond. The doctors had been clear. He was blind. No one would listen to a housekeeper who'd been here 5 days. But she would watch. Over the next 2 weeks, Angela became a shadow in that house, cleaning, folding, moving quietly through rooms. And every chance she got, she watched Samuel. What she saw would change everything. For 2 weeks, Angela moved through that house like she was invisible. She folded laundry, washed dishes, wiped down counters. But every moment she could, she watched Samuel, and she saw things nobody else was seeing. One afternoon, while folding sheets in the nursery, she started humming. Soft, barely a sound. Samuel's head turned. Not much, just a slight tilt toward her voice. Angela stopped humming. His head stayed still. She started again. He turned toward her. Her pulse quickened. Another day, sunlight broke through the fog and spilled across the nursery wall. Angela was changing Samuel's blanket when she noticed his eyes tracking the light as it moved slowly. She froze, watched carefully. The beam shifted. His eyes followed. She grabbed a bright yellow toy from the shelf, held it in front of him, moved it slowly left to right. His eyes tracked it. "Oh my God," she whispered. She glanced at the door. No one was there. No one had seen it. The contrast was brutal. When Mr. Chen was in the room, Samuel lay still, vacant, unreachable. When the nurse checked on him, nothing. No response whatsoever. But when Angela was alone with him, when nobody was watching, he came alive. Small movements, tiny responses. But they were real. At night, Angela would lie in her small room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Why doesn't anyone else see it? She pulled out her phone one night and searched. Misdiagnosed blindness in infants. Articles filled the screen, conditions that mimicked blindness, delayed responses, overstimulation, neurological issues. But something deeper nagged at her. She kept searching. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard before she typed. Keeping babies sick on purpose. The results made her stomach turn. Munchausen by proxy. Caretakers who harmed children to gain attention. Doctors who saw what they wanted to see, cases where babies were kept sedated, kept sick, kept dependent. Angela closed her phone and pressed her hands against her face. No, that's insane. That doesn't happen in houses like this. But she couldn't shake it. Why would a 6-month-old respond to light and sound when nobody was watching, but appear completely blind when others were around? What was she missing? She pulled out a small notebook from her bag and started writing. Every observation, every response, every time Samuel reacted when he wasn't supposed to. The evidence was adding up. But evidence wasn't enough. She needed proof, something undeniable, something that would make people believe her. The next morning, while cleaning Samuel's room, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Mr. Chen walked in carrying a small glass bottle. He tilted Samuel's head back and squeezed 2 drops into each eye. Then he left without a word. Angela stared at the bottle sitting on the silver tray. She'd never been told about any medication, never heard anyone mention it. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. And what she read on that label changed everything. Angela waited until Mr. Chen left the room. Then she walked over to the silver tray and picked up the bottle carefully. The label was worn, scratched in places, but she could still read it. Opticom solution 0.3%, for optic nerve sedation in post-surgical patients. Caution, not approved for pediatric use under 2 years. Her hands started shaking. Sedation. Not treatment, not therapy. Sedation. She turned the bottle over. At the bottom, faded letters, EXP, August 2024. It had expired before Samuel was even born. Angela set the bottle down carefully like it might explode. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. That night, she sat on her bed with her phone, searching every word on that label. Opticom. Optic nerve sedation. Pediatric side effects. The results made her stomach drop. The medication was designed for adults recovering from eye surgery, patients with extreme light sensitivity. It temporarily suppressed visual response to prevent pain. In infants, the side effects were clear: delayed pupil response, reduced light perception, sluggish motor function, temporary visual impairment. Angela read it 3 times. Then she opened her notebook and started writing everything down. Over the next week, she tracked every single moment. 8 a.m., Mr. Chen gives Samuel the drops. 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., Samuel completely unresponsive. Eyes glassy, body limp like a doll. 3 p.m., small movements start. A finger twitch. A blink. 5 p.m., eyes tracking light. Head turning toward sound. 6:30 p.m., reaching for objects. Responding to touch. 7:30 p.m., bedtime. The pattern was undeniable. Every morning the drops went in. Every morning Samuel disappeared. And every evening as the medication wore off, he came back to life. But only when nobody was watching. Angela pressed her pen against the page, hands trembling. Someone was keeping this baby blind on purpose. But who? And why? Dr. Crane had diagnosed him. Mr. Chen administered the drops. Mr. Robert believed his son was hopeless. None of them were seeing what she was seeing. Or maybe they didn't want to see. Angela closed the notebook and hid it under her pillow. If she spoke up now, they'd call her crazy, fire her, maybe worse. She had no proof anyone would believe. Just a housekeeper's observations and a medication bottle. But she couldn't stay silent. Not when a baby's life was being stolen 1 drop at a time. 3 days later, Angela made a decision. She was going to give Samuel his bath, and she was going to see, really see, if he could respond without the medication clouding his system. It was late afternoon. The drops had been wearing off for hours. She filled the small tub with warm water, tested the temperature, and gently lowered Samuel in. What happened next would shatter everything. 3 days ago, late afternoon light poured through the living room windows. Angela set the small white bath on the table, filled it with warm water, and tested the temperature twice. Mr. Chen was running errands. The cook had left early. The house was quiet. It had been 7 hours since Samuel's morning drops. Angela lifted him gently, cradling his head. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "Just you and me." She lowered him into the water. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, just lay there calm. She took the soft sponge, dipped it in the water, and began washing his arms, his chest, his tiny shoulders. Then she lifted the sponge to his forehead. A few bubbles slid down toward his eye. Samuel blinked. Angela froze. She dipped the sponge again. More foam. It rolled down his cheek. He blinked on purpose. Her hands started shaking. "You can feel it," she whispered. "Can't you?" Then Samuel did something that stopped her heart. He turned his face toward her, and his eyes, those blue eyes everyone said were empty, locked onto hers. He wasn't looking through her. He was looking at her. And then he smiled. Not a random twitch. A real smile, full of light, full of life. Angela's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes. Samuel's tiny hand lifted out of the water, trembling, reaching. His wet fingers touched her cheek. "Hi there, sweetheart," she whispered, voice breaking. "You can see me. You've always been able to see me." That's when she heard it. A sound behind her. She turned. Raymond Robert stood in the doorway, briefcase still in his hand, frozen. He'd seen everything. Time stopped. Angela couldn't move, couldn't speak. Raymond's eyes were locked on his son. Samuel turned toward the sound of his father's voice. His head moved. His eyes searched. And then they found him. Father and son looked at each other for the first time in 6 months. Raymond's briefcase hit the floor. He stumbled forward, legs barely holding him. He fell to his knees beside the bath, not caring that water soaked through his expensive suit. "Samuel." His voice cracked. You can see me." Samuel stared at his father's face and smiled. Raymond's hands shook as he reached into the water. Samuel's tiny wet fingers wrapped around his father's thumb. "Oh God," Raymond whispered. "Oh my God." 6 months of grief broke open. Tears poured down his face, silent, uncontrollable. "You can see me," he sobbed. "You've always been able to see me." He pulled Samuel out of the water, held him against his chest, both of them soaking wet, both of them crying. Angela stood back, tears streaming down her own face. Raymond looked at her over Samuel's shoulder. His eyes were wild, confused, desperate, shattered. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Angela's voice was soft, but urgent. "Mr. Robert, I need to show you something." She pulled the small bottle from her pocket, and everything Raymond thought he knew was about to burn to the ground. Raymond sat on the floor still holding Samuel, water pooling around them. He couldn't stop staring at his son's face. Every blink, every tiny movement, real, alive, seeing. Angela knelt beside him and held out the bottle. "This is what Mr. Chen has been giving him every morning for months." Raymond took it with trembling hands, read the label. His face went white. Optic nerve sedation. His voice was barely audible. This isn't for blindness." "No," Angela said quietly. "It's not." She pulled out her notebook, showed him the pages, the times, the patterns, the responses. "Every morning after the drops, he disappears. For 6 hours, he's completely unresponsive. Then when it wears off, he comes back. He tracks light. He turns toward sound. He reaches for things. Raymond stared at the pages, his jaw tight. Someone has been keeping him blind, Angela whispered. On purpose. Raymond's hands started shaking. Who would do this? Why? I don't know, but we need to find out. They moved to Raymond's study. He pulled Samuel's medical file from a locked cabinet. Every report, every scan, every prescription, all signed by Dr. Helena Crane. Angela grabbed her phone, typed the name. Her face changed. Mr. Robert. She turned the screen toward him. Dr. Helena Crane, medical license suspended 18 months ago, pending investigation for unauthorized experimental treatments on minors. Raymond felt the room tilt. Experimental treatments, he read further. Conducting research under the guise of therapy. Multiple complaints filed. Angela kept scrolling. Found research papers published under Crane's name. Induced visual deprivation studies in controlled infant populations. Optic development delays, a longitudinal study of suppressed visual response. Raymond's stomach turned. She was studying him. Angela clicked on the paper, scrolled to the data section. Look at the dates. Subject SR, birth date matched Samuel's. Test intervals matched his appointments. Raymond grabbed the original diagnosis file, flipped to the back. There, in Dr. Crane's handwriting, were notes he'd never seen before. Subject SR, ideal candidate. Father incapacitated by grief. No maternal oversight. Affluent household equals controlled environment. Initiate optic protocol immediately. Daily dosage critical to maintain visual suppression. Document responses monthly for longitudinal data. Raymond read it 3 times. His hands crushed the paper. She targeted us. His voice was hollow. She saw Kelvin die, saw me fall apart, and she used it. Angela placed her hand over his. She won't anymore. Raymond looked at Samuel, asleep in his arms now, his face peaceful. Then he looked at Angela. His voice dropped to something cold, determined. I want her destroyed. What Raymond didn't know yet was that Dr. Crane wasn't working alone, and the people protecting her were more powerful than he could imagine. The next morning, Raymond walked into Dr. Helena Crane's office with Samuel in his arms and Angela beside him. Dr. Crane looked up from her desk, smiled that professional smile. Mr. Robert, I wasn't expecting. Stand up. Her smile faltered. Raymond's voice was quiet, deadly. I said, stand up. She stood slowly, confusion crossing her face. Is something wrong? Raymond stepped forward, held Samuel up so she could see his face clearly. Look at him. Samuel's bright blue eyes locked onto Dr. Crane. Tracking, aware, seeing. Her face went pale. You told me my son was blind, Raymond said. You told me his optic nerves didn't develop. You told me he'd never see anything. Mr. Robert, He can see. Raymond's voice cracked. He's always been able to see. You just made sure nobody knew it. Dr. Crane's hands gripped the edge of her desk. Angela stepped forward, phone in hand. Opticom solution. Expired medication, administered daily to suppress his visual response. Your research papers cite subject SR dates match his birth, his appointments, everything. You can't prove. The medical board already has copies, Angela said calmly. So does his lawyer. So does the district attorney. Dr. Crane's mask shattered. Her breathing quickened. Raymond leaned in close. You saw my wife die. You saw me broken. And you used my grief to turn my son into your research project. His voice dropped to a whisper. Now watch what I do with mine. The lawsuit moved fast. Medical fraud, child endangerment, unauthorized human experimentation. Other families came forward. For more children, same medication, same lies, same doctor. The trial lasted 3 days. Angela testified about the patterns she documented. Medical experts explained how Opticom suppressed visual function. Prosecutors presented Dr. Crane's research papers, her revoked license, her handwritten notes. The jury took 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed everywhere. Raymond stood on the steps, Samuel in his arms, Angela beside him. Samuel looked around at everything, faces, cameras, light, his eyes wide with wonder. Raymond spoke into the microphones, his voice steady. 6 months ago, a doctor told me my son would never see. She didn't just lie. She made it true. She poisoned an infant to create the blindness she claimed to diagnose. His voice caught. But truth doesn't stay buried. My son can see. He's always been able to see. He looked at Angela. And because of one woman who refused to look away, he's free. A reporter called out, "What's next for your family?" Raymond looked at Samuel, then at Angela, then back at the camera. "We're going home. We're going to teach my son about light." That night, Raymond stood in the nursery, the room Kelvin had painted in blues and yellows. Samuel sat on his lap, awake, looking at everything. Raymond held up a small wooden block. "Red." Samuel grabbed it, studied it, smiled. "That's red, buddy," Raymond whispered. "Your mom loved red." Samuel looked up at his father's face, and for the first time, Raymond saw his son truly see him. Angela appeared in the doorway. Raymond reached out his hand. She took it. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't thank family." Raymond pulled her close, Samuel between them. Outside, the fog began to lift. And inside that house, once a tomb, once a place of silence and grief, something new was beginning. But the deepest healing was still to come. 3 months later, the house looked different now. Every curtain open, every window gleaming. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, painting everything gold. Raymond stood in the kitchen making breakfast, something he hadn't done in over a year, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. From the nursery, he heard laughter. He walked down the hall and stopped in the doorway. Angela sat on the floor with Samuel in her lap, 9 months old now, bright-eyed, curious, alive. She held up a red block. "What color is this, sweetheart?" Samuel grabbed it, studied it, held it up to the light. "That's red," Angela whispered. "Red like love." Samuel babbled, reaching for another block, blue this time. Raymond smiled. "What are we learning today?" Angela looked up. "Today we're learning about sky." Raymond sat down beside them, took the blue block, held it toward the window. "See that, buddy? That's the sky your mom loved." His voice softened. "She used to sit right here in this room she painted for you. She'd watch the fog and tell me all the things she'd show you one day." He paused, looking at the walls, those soft blues and yellows Kelvin had chosen. "She'd be so happy you can see them." Angela rested her head on his shoulder. Over the past 3 months, something had shifted between them. They weren't just employer and employee anymore. Not just allies in a fight for justice. They were family. Samuel pointed at the window, making sounds, reaching toward the light. Everything was new to him. Everything was wonder. Raymond kissed the top of Samuel's head, then Angela's. "I never thanked you properly," he said quietly. "For seeing what I couldn't, for fighting when I didn't know how." Angela smiled. "You don't thank family." Raymond pulled them both close. For the first time in a year, he felt whole. Not because the pain was gone. Kelvin's absence still ached deeply. but because he'd learned something grief had tried to steal from him. Hope doesn't die. It just waits. And sometimes God sends it back through people who refuse to look away. Outside, the fog lifted completely. Pure sunlight flooded the estate. Samuel laughed, a bright, beautiful sound that filled every corner of that house. Raymond closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you," not to anyone in particular, just upward, because he knew now, deep in his soul. Kelvin hadn't left them alone. She had sent them exactly who they needed. Angela kissed Samuel's forehead, then looked at Raymond. Her eyes said everything words couldn't. "We're going to be okay." And they were. The house that had been a tomb was a home again. The father who'd lost hope had found it. The son who'd been stolen from had been set free. And the woman who'd spent her whole life invisible had finally been seen. 3 broken people, 1 quiet miracle, and a light that refused to go out. The weeks that followed were filled with small victories. Samuel's first steps came early, at 10 months, his legs wobbling but determined as he reached for Raymond's outstretched hands. Angela captured it on her phone, tears streaming down her face as Raymond scooped their boy up and spun him around. "Kelvin would have loved this," he whispered. "She's watching," Angela said softly. "I know she is." They established routines. Morning walks in the garden where Samuel would point at flowers, birds, clouds. Afternoon story time where Angela would read colorful picture books while Samuel turned the pages himself. Evening dinners where Raymond would cook, badly at first, but improving, while Samuel sat in his high chair, banging wooden spoons and laughing at the chaos. Mr. Chen stayed on, his demeanor softening as he witnessed the transformation. He'd been following orders, he'd explained tearfully, never knowing the truth. Raymond forgave him, understanding that Dr. Crane's manipulation had reached further than anyone realized. The cook started preparing Samuel's favorite foods, mashed sweet potatoes, tiny pieces of fruit, soft bread. She'd smile watching him eat, his eyes lighting up at each new taste. The house filled with sound again. Laughter. Music. Life. One evening, as they sat together on the nursery floor, Samuel crawled over to the wall and touched the blue paint. Then the yellow. "Colors," Angela said gently. "Your mama's colors." Samuel looked up at them both and smiled that beautiful smile that had started everything. Raymond wrapped his arm around Angela's shoulders. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We live," Raymond said simply. "We love. We remember. And we keep going." 6 months after the trial, Raymond Robert stood in his office reviewing documents for the foundation he was establishing. The Kelvin Robert Foundation for Medical Ethics and Child Protection. It would fund independent medical reviews for vulnerable children, support families navigating complex diagnoses, and advocate for stricter oversight of pediatric research. Angela walked in carrying Samuel, now 15 months old, his blonde hair catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. "Someone wants to say goodnight before bed," she said. Raymond looked up, his face breaking into a warm smile. He pushed back from the desk and opened his arms. Samuel wiggled free from Angela and toddled across the room, his steps more confident now. He crashed into Raymond's legs with a giggle. "There's my boy," Raymond said, scooping him up. Samuel immediately grabbed his father's face, studying it intently the way he still did sometimes, as if making up for all those lost months. "Dada," Samuel said clearly. Raymond's eyes filled with tears. It never got old, hearing his son's voice, seeing his son's eyes looking back at him with recognition and love. Angela leaned against the doorframe, watching them. These moments still took her breath away, the transformation from that silent tomb of a house to this vibrant home filled with joy. "The foundation documents are almost complete," Raymond said, settling Samuel on his hip. "We'll be operational by next month." "Kelvin would be proud," Angela said softly. "She'd be proud of you," Raymond corrected. "None of this would exist without you." Angela shook her head. I just saw what needed to be seen. No, Raymond said firmly. You refused to look away when everyone else had given up. You saved my son's life. You saved mine too. Samuel yawned, resting his head against Raymond's shoulder. Someone's tired, Angela observed. Raymond carried Samuel to the nursery, Angela following. The room had changed since Kelvin first painted it. Now it was filled with toys, books, pictures Samuel had scribbled with crayons, evidence of a life fully lived. Raymond laid Samuel in his crib, now converted to a toddler bed. Samuel clutched his favorite stuffed bear, the one Angela had given him months ago. Story? Samuel asked hopefully. Just a short one, Raymond said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Angela settled into the rocking chair nearby. Raymond picked up a picture book and began reading, his voice gentle. Samuel's eyes grew heavy, tracking the colorful illustrations until they finally closed. Raymond kissed his forehead. Good night, buddy. I love you. Love you, Samuel mumbled sleepily. They dimmed the lights and stepped into the hallway, leaving the door slightly ajar. In the quiet corridor, Raymond turned to Angela. Can we talk? Of course. They walked to the living room, settling onto the comfortable couch where so much had changed that day Angela gave Samuel his bath. Raymond took Angela's hand. These past months. I don't know how to put this into words. Angela waited, her heart beating faster. When Kelvin died, I thought my life was over, Raymond continued. I thought I'd just exist, going through motions, never really living again. Then you came, and you didn't just save Samuel. You reminded me what it means to hope, to fight, to love. Angela's eyes glistened with tears. You've become essential to us, Raymond said. To me. And I know this started as a job, but somewhere along the way, it became something more. At least for me. For me too, Angela whispered. Raymond cupped her face gently. I'm not asking you to replace Kelvin. Nobody could. But I'm asking if you'd consider building something new with us. A family. A future. Angela's tears spilled over. I've been invisible my whole life, Raymond. Always on the outside looking in. But with you and Samuel, I finally feel seen. I feel home. You are home, Raymond said. You've always been home. We just didn't know we were waiting for you. He pulled her close, and they sat together in the peaceful silence of the house that had come back to life. Outside, the Boston fog rolled in gently, but inside, everything was warm and bright. 3 months later, on a clear autumn morning, Raymond and Angela stood in the garden behind the estate. Samuel toddled between them, carrying a small basket of flower petals. A modest gathering of friends and staff watched as they exchanged vows, simple, honest promises to love, honor, and cherish each other and the family they were building together. Mr. Chin stood witness, tears in his eyes. The cook dabbed at her face with a handkerchief. When Raymond kissed his bride, Samuel clapped his hands and shouted, "Yay!" Everyone laughed. That evening, they stood together in Samuel's room for bedtime. Their room now, all 3 of them connected, all 3 of them healing. Tell me about Mama Kelvin, Samuel said, as he often did. Angela and Raymond exchanged glances. They'd agreed early on that Kelvin would always be part of their story, always honored, always remembered. Mama Kelvin loved you before you were born, Angela said gently. She painted this beautiful room for you. She chose these colors because she wanted you to wake up to light every single day. And she sent you Mama Angela, Raymond added. Because she knew we'd need someone special to help us find our way. Samuel considered this seriously, then nodded. 2 mamas. 2 mamas, Angela confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. One who watches from heaven, and one who's right here. And 1 papa, Samuel added. And 1 papa, Raymond agreed, kissing his son's head. They tucked Samuel in together, singing him the lullaby Angela had hummed those first days when she discovered the truth. As they left the room, Raymond pulled Angela close, looking back at their sleeping son. "We made it," he whispered. "We did," Angela replied. "And we'll keep making it. One day at a time." They walked hand in hand down the hallway of the house that had been transformed by love, by truth, by refusing to give up. Behind them, in the nursery painted in blues and yellows, Samuel slept peacefully, dreaming in color. The light Kelvin had wished for her son shone brightly now, not just in the painted walls, but in the love that filled every corner of their home. 3 broken people had become one whole family. And the darkness that had tried to steal everything had been defeated by one simple truth: love refuses to look away. The end.